Okay, briefly, let's talk about the cell cycle. All right, so like I said before, two main parts, interphase and mitotic phase, right? I'm gonna put here big numeral number 1 so you can follow, and this is gonna be numeral number 2, Roman numeral number 2. All right, so in interphase, what happens, by the way, interphase is like 90% of the cell cycle. Why? Because, well, the cell needs to do whatever it needs to do to keep us alive, right? So it spends most of the time doing whatever it needs to do. So this is going to be, let's split interphase into the 3 different phases. So let's just say number 1, number 2, and number 3. And this is for interphase. So what happens to the G1 phase? G1, here you have just your normal activities like cell growth. Okay, this happens during the G1, the first gap. Cell growth, you have normal functions of the cell, whatever the cell needs to do to stay alive, to do its job. We also have some kind of, let me do like little points here. There you go. Organelle production. Organelle production. Remember, cells are made of organelles, little places or little organs, right, where they have a specific function. And, other stuff that's happening here, proteins are made. Proteins are made. So the DNA is probably a little bit loose. Okay. Then we go to S phase. And the S phase is extremely important because this is like the cells, it knows it's going to start to divide pretty soon. So before it divides, it needs to be able to make a copy of its DNA. So S phase, what happens here? The obvious, right? DNA duplication. DNA replication or duplication. Okay, in other words, we're making a copy of all of the DNA. So DNA replication is making a copy of all its DNA, all the DNA in the cell. Okay, and remember that at the end of the S phase ends with chromosomes, having two sister chromatids. Whenever you see two sister chromatids, we know that the DNA has been replicated. The cell has gone through the S phase. All right. And then we go through the G2 phase, G2T again, G2, we are getting ready to, or the cell is getting ready to divide. So it's just gonna, cell gets ready to divide. Cell gets ready to divide. In other words, maybe some organelles need to be replaced or to be made so there's enough organelles for both daughter cells. All right, and then we have my mitotic phase. And I'm gonna change the color really quick. I'm gonna erase this, but I'm gonna redo it with a different color. There you go. So the mitotic phase, like we already know, it's made of two different phases, right? We have mitosis, okay, which is a division of the nucleus. And we have cytokinesis, which is a division of the cytoplasm. Division of cytoplasm. And with division of cell cytoplasm, also the cell components, like the cell organelles. Components. Okay. And at the end of the day, we end up with, let me do this in a different color. We end up with two identical daughter cells. Two identical or two genetically identical, let me put that over here, genetically identical daughter cells. Okay, and it's supposed to be two. And the reason why I did this, so technically it's supposed to be this one here and this one here. However, I'm gonna use this one for a different purpose. All right, so I'm gonna go over here because what happens was it's showing you over here. It's telling you that sometimes after division, some cells like your it's telling you that sometimes after division, some cells like your muscle cells, like your neurons, they kind of leave this life cycle and they're just going to something called the GO cycle or the GO stage, right? And the GO is going to be the non-dividing phase, okay? Uh, or state, right? Like again, like for example, your muscle cells, your muscle cells, your neurons, for example. So these are cells, okay, that don't divide, right? Once you have them, you have them. That's it, right? So they kind of live this kind of phase. All right. So this is the life cycle. And I didn't mention this, and I'm not gonna go into more detail, but also, just so you know, inside of this life cycle, there's always going to be like regulators. There's going to be some kind of checkpoints. So this is just for you to know. Okay, there's always going to be checkpoints within the cell life cycle. And what do checkpoints do? Yeah, they check that everything is okay. Everything is okay, and the cycle can continue. And without going to many more details, just know that there's going to be some checkpoints to see, for example, if we have enough chromosomes, if the DNA was replicated correctly, because your cell is going to also, your cell is very, very smart. It's going to know when something is going wrong and it doesn't want to go wrong. So it's going to have some checkups to see if everything is going well and the cycle is going to continue. And if for any reason there's something wrong, then the cell can either redo it or fix it or just I don't know kill itself because that way the cell will not cause any more trouble.